So we're here to talk to you about just kind of in general Change by Us and Code for America in Philadelphia and other places. And just going to start off with a brief overview of what Change by Us is. It is a social media platform for civic ideas, activists, and projects. It's deployed right now in New York City and in Philadelphia. Those are the only two cities where it is right now. It's coming soon to... we can't say where it's coming soon to. There's a lot of interest around the... That was pretty good. There's a lot of interest around the world to deploy this tool. It's open source. So in general, what it does, I mean, it has kind of basic functionality. The goal was to create a minimal viable project. It was a fellowship, so we had, I guess 11 months or so to put something together. So it's, you saw the front page. It does input solicitation, and that's that adorable sticky note. There you go. So you put ideas on there. The other thing that the tool can do is you add projects and you join projects. And I guess we always described it as being light project management. I mean, this isn't Microsoft Project. We didn't want anybody to have to go to like a 3-week certification class to learn how to use it. So can do just a few basic things. I mean, you enter in a project. Once you type in a project, it will, if there's a project that's similar to the project you want to enter, it will ask you if you want to join that project rather than duplicating it and starting a project. But you can add members, you can tweet about it, Facebook it, and +1 it, share it, social media channels. There's a discussion section. There's a place where you can identify the needs of your project. Am I missing any of the functionality?
No, I mean, I think we were really inspired by Kickstarter. So we think of it as a marketplace for community projects. So instead of donating money, you donate your time or your stuff to contribute to making your city better. That's how I would say it.
So that's basically it. We just wanted, that's good.
Okay.
We just wanted to do a really quick overview. And then I guess the who's listening part was, I'll just talk about that for, that's okay. I'll just talk about that for a second. It was important that, people, because this was a government partnership with government to design this and deploy it, we wanted to have people know that there were actually people on the other end who were listening to the ideas and looking at the projects. And so I think these are the top 4. I think we cut off the bottom 3, but these folks, and it's really their staffs who are looking at the projects and interacting with people on the back end on a regular basis. That's good. Thanks. This is just our agenda. It's an agenda. Okay. Just real general for those of you who don't know what Code for America is. Anna, feel free to jump in. But it's basically, I do their pitch just as well as they do. But Code for America is like Teach for America.
But it's not Teach for America.
But it's not Teach for America. It's Code for America. It's headquartered in San Francisco. I guess they're about 2 years old. Founded by Jennifer Palka, and we applied to be in their in their inaugural year, which was 2011. We had really no idea at the time what it was. I didn't know what it was, but we just applied, and then we found that we got it. And it's turned out to be really useful and productive in the civic innovation space inside city government. We were one of 5 municipalities that got selected. Boulder County, this is just random trivia, but Boulder County dropped out because they didn't have the money, and I guess at some point DC changed administrations, and so the new administration didn't want to continue the fellowship. So it was us, Boston, and Seattle in the inaugural year, and then we actually reapplied this year. We were the only city to do it twice because it'd be hard to repeat because it's only been around for 2 years, but we were the only city to do it twice, and now we're one of 8 cities this year doing Code for America. And do you want to, maybe I should rattle it off. Well,
wait, go ahead. Rattle what? Oh, God. I'll help you. Macon, Georgia.
Santa Cruz.
Chicago.
Detroit,
yeah. I'm following.
Okay, there's 4 of the 8 cities.
No,
Philadelphia, that's 5.
Hold on. New Orleans. Austin.
And Honolulu.
Honolulu.
Did we get it? Is that 8?
I think that's
nice.
Yeah,
okay. Did you want to say anything else about it?
I mean, and it's a fellowship, so passionate technologists take a year off from their lives to give back through code and design. So the cities are paired with fellows, and the fellows work to build solutions that the cities, decide fellows could possibly work on for a year.
Right. Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is just framing up. When we applied originally, we had three concepts that we threw out there. We had something around 311 and kind of usage of 311 data. The other was around public safety, and the other was that we wanted to have some kind of citizen engagement app designed and built. And this was kind of the problem statement that we put out there. So on the left, you have kind of the milieu of different kinds of people who live in the city. I always thought it was important to note that we have French peasants, 3 of them, with the pitchforks. I don't really know what photo album that got pulled from. But the slide right there, this boundary synchronization slide. So if you think about how the city is organized geographically at the state, federal, and local level, both administratively, operationally, as well as legislatively, none of the lines are coterminous. Nothing actually matches up with each other, and so we weren't really super concerned about state and federal government. But even if you look at the city departments, city council districts, the police districts, fire districts, none of them match with each other. So I guess one of my jokes during the fellowship was like, I don't live in sanitation district 6A, but like that's where the city thinks that I live. So it makes, from an internal perspective, I don't think this is something that we in the city like run around thinking about every day, but it actually kind of makes organizing around problems a little difficult, because the city really is this big, disparate, diverse place, and you can never call a meeting of the folks in District 1, if District 1 was North Philadelphia or Northwest Philadelphia. So our concept was, wouldn't it be cool if we had a tool that kind of virtualized this kind of geographic organization? We're not really suggesting that we should sync everything up. That would be kind of a heavy lift. But like, what if we kind of created this online version of this and kind of created a vision for how we could better organize ourselves, organize around problems and geographies and fashion solutions. So that's basically just explaining what our original concept was for building the tool. And then these are like the vintage graphics. I haven't changed these since we started talking about the tool, but and then I have like little hand motions to go along with it. But one of the problems that we see in, I guess, just in the public space generally is sometimes like a citizen wants to get something done, but we don't connect them with the right people, whether it's in government or outside of government. They kind of have to go through the whole chain, and the mayor's at the top of it. So they're like, they're talking to committee people and civic leaders, and then somehow the mayor gets involved, and then the mayor delegates it, and the deputy mayor's involved, and really all that needed to happen was the person needed to like get the permit so they could have the block party, and so that was, and nobody needed to do like the angry tweet about it. So the idea was like, it'd be great if we could try to help if we could try to have a tool that would help, create the connections between people who had the issue or had the wherewithal maybe to figure out a solution to a problem, and then the people who could help them. And again, I say kind of in or outside of government, because I don't think there's a presumption that government doesn't solve all problems. A lot of times there are people outside of government who you need to connect up with to solve problems. And then on the right, 311 didn't end up being a big part of this, but our basic concept was, what if we had this space where all these different parties were interacting, and they could connect online and then take the interaction offline, so they could figure out what needed to be done. And then I'm not going to like belabor each. There's like 2 slides with 4 scenarios each, but we were just trying to explain. We try to run out a few different scenarios for how this tool could possibly be used. And I guess these two examples are really showing how the tool could be used to help citizens themselves organize without government assistance. And then on the next slide, scenario 3 is, what if folks organized and then got Center City District involved? And then the last one is a tree planting scenario where folks got organized and then the city actually did come in and help them, get trees and plant trees. Just in terms of kind of how we approach the project, the Code for America Fellows, they have a month of, I like to call, indoctrination before they get sent to their cities. So they're in the cities for the month of February. They're actually not physically on the ground in the cities the entire time. They do come back from time to time, but they met with, I think, we had 7 fellows here last year. It really felt great. It was the only time that I ever had that many people like hanging out with me at one time. It felt very powerful. But I set up a lot of meetings with folks inside of government and outside of government, and they ended up connecting with about 200 people in these meetings. Inside city government, they met with what I like to call the nodes of power, but we have kind of a deputy mayor structure, and then the mayor's office. The mayor did meet with the fellows and the finance group, so those are kind of the nodes of power within city government. A bunch of other people. We had a hackathon at Azavia, which was well attended and successful, and then we had a fairly large public event with Technically Philly and Young Involved Philadelphia. But the point of the month of February is just discovery. They're supposed to do a deep dive into the city and really kind of try to get a sense of the issues, the problems, the strengths, the culture. And I always say that I've lived here since 1989, and I kind of resented the fellows because they were only here for like 4 or 5 weeks, and they had better connections and contacts than I did after those few weeks. They spoke at Ignite. They were all over the place.
Next slide.
Yes, please. This is just explaining the value proposition of the fellowship. I mean, a lot of this is, of course, it's all retrospective because when we were going into this, we didn't really know what the value was going to be. But overall, I mean, if you do some quick math, we paid $225K for the first year for the fellowship, and I think we got, probably $1 million in pro bono service through the fellowship. We've gotten really just, I think this, for us inside city government, I'm not sure, I'd be interested to know if anybody has, seen anything outside of city government, but for us inside of city government, being part of this Code for America Club has given us a stature among peer cities that I'm not sure we had previously. So the people that I talk to all the time are from San Francisco or New York or Boston, Chicago. Those are my colleagues. So it's been really great. I guess it's for me personally, but I mean it's good for the for the mayor's office of our city to have connectivity to those other cities, and then I think it's also just given us a lot of a little press boost because it's been reported on pretty widely, and Jen Palco goes and speaks all over the place. I guess this government as platform and civic fusion concepts, these are sort of two of the philosophical underpinnings of Code for America and for the project. And all of this most of what I say is ripped off from Jen Palca. I just want to acknowledge that, and Tim O'Reilly. But this government as platform concept is the idea that government actually doesn't do everything, can't do everything, won't do everything, and we have to figure out. We need to figure out how government can play a role, and many times it's not as direct service provider, but it's as a convener, as a legitimizer, as a congratulator, as an giving attaboys and attagirls to get things done in the public space. And so civic fusion, the idea of civic fusion is, I think it's kind of the updated version of what a public-private partnership was back in the early 90s when there was a lot of talk about, the books, Reinventing Government, and more steering and less rowing. But the idea of civic fusion is that it doesn't presume that government is at the head of it, kind of dictating what the what the structure or the outcome is. It's government playing this different kind of role, and civic fusion happens when a public-private partnership is successful, seamless, and just kind of sustainable, is able to carry on. I guess two big takeaways after the fellows left was that just the ambassadorial role that they played for us was very strong. And they really helped, and it wasn't kind of done in a cheesy way. We didn't put them out there in a cheesy way as government, but they legitimized our efforts in the civic innovation kind of open government space because they were able to connect with the community probably in a way that like a guy in a suit couldn't. And let's face it, and I'm not a technologist, by the way, but I mean the technology community is, they can be persnickety. They don't suffer fools gladly. I mean, they don't want to hear a lot of blah blah blah. So this was like a real thing and a real program. And the other kind of corny but sincere thing was that I think that they taught us that this kind of like civic hacking culture is actually, it's here. The magic was in us all along. It's kind of like the Wizard of Oz, and I think that they just, particularly, I think maybe even more so inside of government, showed us that it was real. And I think for the outside technology community, they were like, yeah, it's what we've been trying to tell you. So, do you have anything?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, Change by Us is one of many apps we built, and there were a lot of quick win projects in Philadelphia, smaller apps that people just made at hackathons over a weekend. An app to find public art.
Art Mapper.
Yeah, Art Mapper. Was it SEPTA's app?
One of them. Yeah.
One of them, and so I think that's part of it.
Yes.
Like that kind of culture. Like just get together in a room and do it and see what happens.
Yeah.
When you collaborate.
Well, and I would say, just to that point, big bureaucracies usually do fat startup. So this is lean startup. So it's a new approach for folks inside of government.
Okay, so we built this technology, and then we also had to figure out how to launch it, and so we needed a strategy. And again, just to reiterate what Jeff sort of already said at the beginning, the goal was to get people to share their steps, to getting things done in the city. So this is a project that could happen anywhere, but this happened in Seattle. If you paint a ladybug in the middle of an intersection, in a busy intersection where cars speed, cars slow down because they think kids are at play. But you need to do a few things before you actually paint the ladybug. I mean, you need a permit from the city. You need the right kind of paint. You need to coordinate your neighbors. But those kinds of steps should be available to everyone. So the trick was, how do you tap into, so the idea here is like any intersection should be able to have its own ladybug. And so the question we had to ask ourselves is, how do you create a community of practice? So our community of practice was going to be around, community betterment. How do you make your city better? There are lots of successful communities of practice that we look to. Flickr is one of them, where you learn to be a better photographer. You could say Instagram does that too. Vimeo, you learn to be a better videographer. Kickstarter, you learn to fund your creative project. And Change by Us was about helping, build a hub of expertise around making Philadelphia better. We read a lot of books, and some key things that came out of our research and talking to founders of these communities were, and this might seem obvious, but creating a sense of belonging. I think, Twitter does this well. I mean, there's a sort of an internal language in Twitter that makes you feel like you belong. Maybe Foursquare does, has those badges that make you feel like you belong. But also, it's being responsive to people in the community and really making them feel like their contributions matter, which Jeff has been really good about. So you have to have people interacting, and it has to feel real and authentic. Also, tapping into an existing community, and this is tried and true. Flickr started with 10,000 gamers from Game Never Ending. Facebook, of course, is college kids trying to connect. That's where it began. And so we had to identify community leaders and tap into those communities in Philadelphia to launch this properly. And etiquette, one thing that a lot of people say is that you have to greet the first 10,000 users personally. And again, Jeff has done a really good job. We don't have 10,000 yet, but we'll get there.
Actually visit folks at their homes
and
say thank you for
yeah.
Signing in. Yeah. No, I don't do it.
But you do go to community meetings and things. The other advantage we had was that New York launched this tool before Philadelphia did, so we called up New York. There's a guy named Bob Richardson. He was in charge of constituent services in New York City. I think now he has some sort of title that's director of innovation of some sort. But at any rate, New York had a lot of good words of wisdom. Within the first 2 months, they had 2,500 ideas and 251 projects, 19 of which were given micro grants, and that really sort of spurred interest in the tool and got people using it. One big fear, I don't know, Jeff, if you had this, but you know, if you're it's scary. The idea of moderation and welcoming the crowd can be really scary if you haven't done it before. And one thing that I think assuaged Jeff's fears probably was that there wasn't a lot of abuse when they launched this tool. You know, would you say? I mean, like that, was that a concern of yours, or?
Like that, the blacklist and the gray list are
Okay.
really extensive. So yeah, I was.
Right.
I don't think we were ever really concerned.
You weren't that
here.
concerned?
No.
But I mean, it's one of those concerns, like how much time do you have to spend monitoring
Yeah.
something like this?
I think for
But it
us,
didn't
we've
have
been
it.
doing social media. I mean, we've been doing a lot of Facebook and Twitter from the get-go, so we didn't really, we
Right.
weren't concerned about people writing weird things.
Well,
Yeah.
anyway, nobody wrote weird things. We created marketing materials. This is a postcard. And then we also created a few videos, and I'm going to play one of them, which I helped to make. We put it online.
We sit up on our heads to keep them out of trouble, that they make it rest upon the stairs and think of better things and climbing pieces. People all telling all the things they gotta prove, people telling all the things they gotta do. But I really love what you said from the door, that I'll be all made a little older than before.
And we had a press conference,
We did.
and we played this video.
We played the other one.
The other one, we had,
Philly
there are
Candid
two
video.
videos. Yeah. And here's what happened next. So within the first 2 weeks, there were 300 ideas, 40 projects, and 270 users, and one Jeff Friedman, which is important to note because, you know, New York had this team, 5 to 7 people. It was just Jeff, and New York is also 8 times the size of Philadelphia. And I've just been really impressed with all of the work Jeff's put into this. It takes a lot of gumption to be, you know, the pioneer in putting out a new project, and I think it's pretty awesome. And then do you want to talk a little bit about where we are now?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to. Yeah, so
Okay.
basically we're, as Anna, well, I mean, we sort of had moderate growth. We launched at the end of November, so it's just been a few months. So those are our stats right now. These are just some examples of some of the connections that we made online that we've taken offline, because I think probably the thing to realize about version 1.0 of the tool is that it's not super dynamic, so a lot of what happens actually doesn't happen on the site. It's the connections that are made on the site. But these are just some examples. Like one guy had a project where he was trying to get netbooks in the classroom, and we were able to make a connection with him, a corporate connection, and he ended up getting Chromebooks in the classroom. but he was happy. There's a group that you might have seen written up called Public School Parents for Neighborhood Schools. It's like a consortium of parents groups down here in Center City, I guess for the 11 public schools that are in Center City, and they're on the tool. And they've gotten some connections to the city through interacting with the tool and with me. And then dog parks, everybody loves dog parks. There's 3 dog parks there's like a Mayfair dog park, a Fairmount dog park, and a Mount Airy dog park. And I've put those people in touch with each other and with the folks at, hey Maurice, and with the people at the rec department. And so in terms of, and maybe Anna will sort of speak to this a little bit, but because this is an open source tool, and we didn't really run this out of the IT shop as a tech project. We didn't have it. It's not supported. We don't have anybody in-house who can futz with it and fix bugs. So we talked to Carl Vogel, who I guess wrote the book on open source, and got some advice from him in terms of how to move it along. And so we've teed up an advisory group that's now meeting on a regular basis to kind of take the technological ownership of the project, but also the programmatic, because it is kind of an open, consistent with the theme of it being open source. It's not really just kind of a city-run and managed project. And then Anna mentioned the Civic Innovation Grants in New York, but New York keeps asking us when we're going to do our Civic Innovation Grant process, because it's been very successful for them. And in terms of, just in generally in terms of the value proposition of using the tool, sort of without the Civic Innovation Grant Contest, we tell people, it's a way of elevating your project, of hopefully attracting some resources to it, connecting to other folks as well as to people in the city. So that's kind of the value proposition. But when you throw in the money, I think you make it really valuable to people. So we're very optimistic based upon New York's results that once we kick that off, it's going to be at the end of the month. We're probably going to talk about it at Philly Tech Week. But we have money from the Knight Foundation, who's been a really big supporter of a lot of civic innovation work in the city. But we have some money from them to run actually a series of civic innovation grant contests.
And one big gap we forgot to mention, the reason why it was launched in New York first is because actually we partnered with a design company in New York called Local Projects, who's working with the city to do this project. And it turned out that we were on track to build the same sort of tool, and then we found out about them, and our whole mandate at Code for America was reuse first, reuse code, and collaborate always. And so we added extra features that we thought were necessary into Philadelphia's tool that aren't in New York's tool yet, but probably is a little bit confusing, but because I thought we were going to talk about it earlier, but we didn't. But that's why open sourcing, we didn't start open source. We had to open source the tool. We worked with them to open source their tool, which is what I'm about to talk about. So again, we had this incredible resource in Carl Vogel, who authored this book, Producing Open Source Software. He's amazing. He helped us in a big way explain what it meant to go open source to the local projects team. And we ended up using a general public license, which is a very popular license. It allows local projects to maintain their copyright, incorporate code from GitHub into their project and continue to work with New York and other partners. And then also, a huge bit of the work was standardizing the code and providing documentation. And this is a shout out to other members of my team, Junbei in particular, because he was our Python ninja and a good teacher, yes?
And he's also a Philadelphia resident.
And he's also a Philadelphia resident, which is important. As a result of going open source, Buenos Aires is about to launch the tool. And they're actually going to use it in a very similar way that New York's using it for green initiatives. So they've translated Change by Us into Spanish. And their idea, oh, sorry, I went too fast. And the idea is they're going to kick off the tool, they're going to use the tool to organize community meetings around garbage and bicycles and green rooftops. And the mayor of Buenos Aires is going to visit these meetings. But anyway,
It's really
Jeff,
cool.
do you want? Yeah,
Is
I
it-
think it's
so
awesome.
it's now public?
No, they're
Okay,
not. They
don't
haven't
tell-
done it yet,
Don't say anybody.
but
Don't say
they're on their
anybody.
way.
So, I mean, just in terms of what's next for Change by Us Philly, I mean, I think, all of this has been kind of a grand experiment and a big learning experience for Code for America and for those of us in the city and kind of partners outside the city who are involved in this project, because it isn't just, notwithstanding Anna's very kind comments, there's really a lot of people who are involved in this besides me outside of city government. I mean, so in terms of the new normal, which I guess, I don't know if everybody says that in government, we say the new normal a lot, but typically when we talk about it, it's, it's just having to do with the economic collapse and the fact that governments have less money, which I think everybody knows, and then also the fact that health care benefits and pension benefits keep eating up kind of bigger portions of government's discretionary income. So we have that. Tech advancing quickly, that's, I guess Clay Johnson has a great talk about this, but he refers to Moore's Law. And I guess I saw it from inside government, and I say it more inarticulately than he does because I use my arm to do like a graph. But basically it's this kind of approach to getting IT projects done is going to be the way that we do things more and more, because it's very, as IT kind of spreads out and deepens in terms of its support for business processes in, just all parts of our lives, public, private, whatever. Government bureaucracies have difficulty because they're very constrained in terms of how quickly they can move and act and procure and source and staff. So that's another part of the new normal. And then just in terms of kind of success models with government as the platform, when you think about what a lot of the innovation in the public space that's taking place in just our city in particular, if most of you are from this area, I think about the charter schools and business improvement districts and CDCs and nonprofit institutions, and how a lot of things that are really innovative and meeting with great success are, they're happening outside of government, but with government support or authorization or encouragement. So those are kind of the, 3 observations about kind of where Change by Us goes and how it's fitting in. And then I think crowdfunding is really, I referred to this, but I just want to overemphasize the point and beat it to death. But I think that crowdfunding is really the answer to kind of where does Change by Us go next. I mean, it's really cool that people can organize and connect with each other, but at some point somebody wants to, if somebody wants to do something, if they want to do a cleanup, it's great because the city can deliver some shovels and some bags and that might work. But people are going to want to do more. They might want to put in a playground or a dog park, and they need $50,000, $100,000, capital cost, and then they need, ongoing maintenance. And so I think that once we figure out how to, really leverage these tools for these kinds of projects, that's when this kind of civic fusion process is really going to take off. And I'm just going to mention, I think people might know about Funding Works because it's a local group of local folks who've launched a crowdfunding site. Brad Euler and Nathan Solomon, and I guess Thaddeus, I don't know what his last name is. Citizen Effect is something that's coming to Philadelphia. It's another awesome night-funded project, but they're doing it in Detroit right now, and it's called Detroit for Detroit. But they don't say they're crowdfunding, they say they're citizen philanthropy, but they identify 150 projects in the city, and then they identify 150 leaders who are associated with those projects, and then they give those leaders kind of the support and the internet tools to crowdfund from $1,000 to $10,000, and that's going to be rolling out here in June. So I think that's very exciting. And they've sort of connected up with Change by Us and the things that we're doing kind of in and outside of city government and the civic innovation space. And then, as I mentioned, we do have more money to do the civic innovation grant processes for Change by Us.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
That's it.
Yay.
Yeah, we'd love to open it up for questions if you have them.
One thing that immediately jumped to mind when you mentioned there being sort of a lack of resources for, the question is can you support this over time? And can you have and you do need somebody debugging Philly has a couple of, a few really great resources for that in the major universities here, right? The Drexel internship program, my company is benefiting greatly from the Drexel internship program. I know that there's a lot of interest in Penn's computer science department on getting the students to move away from theoretical and pre-cooked problems to real world problems.
Okay.
And I wondered if you guys had investigated at all sort of having, how it could work would be more of foster a little bit more continuity.
Yeah,
where you have someone who's at the university long term who's constantly. Oh, okay.
We've no, it's an awesome suggestion, and we're connected with Young Moo Kim over at Drexel, the guy with the robots, and we're sort of they're part of this working group, and the idea basically is to see how how can Drexel, especially with the co-ops, kind of contribute to the ongoing. But it's a great suggestion, and if anybody has any contacts, we're always happy to follow up with people and see if they want to get plugged in.
You said that your version is a little bit different than New York's. I only see one project on GitHub though. Is that yours?
Yeah, that's our
Okay.
project. Yeah, it is a little bit different. We there's
Is it the needs?
yeah, it's the needs. So there's this. So you can post a need. So you need like trash bags. You can volunteer to help, and then when you do that, your little image pops up there. There are a couple other features like that.
I think you can donate. The needs are broken into two categories. That's one of the
Yeah, that's the
differences.
other
Like
thing.
need
And events, needs and events.
Yeah.
hmm
Pardon?
What are the two categories?
Needs and events. So you can post those. And have people volunteer.
And needs are associated with events. I assume?
Yeah, you can associate needs with events.
Okay. And it's under local projects though on GitHub, which is
Mhm.
the New York.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So how often are you looking through this? I mean, you getting notified of every single submission?
We get emails when projects pop up, and then people are just the folks that I work with in and outside of government who have access, or just I just ask them to kind of engage with it the way you would engage in social media generally. So kind of like when you get the time to take a look at it, and also there's also the resources that are. I don't know if we showed you the resources section, but basically there's a way to add in nonprofits. So when you start a project, you can select the nonprofits that are kind of geographically or substantively connected to your project, and they'll get an email notification when a project gets started. There's no obligation for them to do anything. It's just letting them know that somebody's initiated a project that might be connected to their geography or their subject matter expertise.
I have one more question. I don't know much about the code or the practical parts of the project, but what are you doing to bridge the digital divide? Not everyone has a smartphone, say, and internet access isn't as accessible in areas of the city that might benefit the most from a platform like this.
We have the city has. I don't know if you heard of the city's program for. It's called Key Spots now. It was called Freedom Rings, but we had. It's like a $25 million, mostly ERA-funded project. It's with partnership with Drexel and with Urban Affairs Coalition. So there's 77 computer centers going around in the city in areas where they had, where they have generally low connectivity, and 4 of those are going to be mobile. And so they're our colleagues, and we've been in contact. We're in touch with them. They're part of this project as well. So the thought was that we could do a training or series of trainings at their locations at some point in the future.
Does it do SMS?
You can text your ideas in. Yeah.
And then what resources does it run on? Like, where are the servers or?
It's Amazon Web Services. It's hosted up there for now. Yeah.
Has there been a lot of enthusiasm from government officials for it?
Yeah.
do they seem hopeful, or are they kind of ignoring it for now? I mean, most government officials aren't particularly good at social media.
Well, I don't know. Have you seen the mayor?
I haven't seen the mayor.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I would say, I mean, the mayor is really into Code for America and Change by Us, so he's personally interested in the project and in Code for America generally. He actually kind of tweets extensively, and no one's resistant to it. I mean, to be honest with you, just putting myself in other folks' shoes, I think that we haven't fully demonstrated the value proposition for. I sort of talked about the value proposition of people getting the money as the users, but I also think the same value proposition exists for the other folks, like to see oh, this is how we can leverage kind of social media to do crowdsourcing and crowdfunding to get stuff done in the public space that we all want done, but maybe we don't have the agility or the money or the intellectual capacity to do right now. But if we can help organize a group of citizens around an issue or a geography and solve the problem. But I just don't think we've ever, I don't think we've demonstrated that yet to them.
Okay. So it's just letting it mature and hopefully demonstrating that via the tool, via the community.
Yeah. Well, I think the civic, I mean, I don't want to, keep saying the Civic Innovation Grant Contest is going to do everything, but that's what New York found really sparked their, the use of their tool and the excitement, enthusiasm around it. Yes.
Thanks, Jeff. Do you see any potential for the lessons learned in terms of the lean startup bleeding over into other aspects of government, Philly government besides IT?
I do, personally, yeah. I mean, to me, I guess for me, I acknowledge that I'm not a technologist. I mean, I went to law school, and then I've kind of done government management work for most of my career up until the last couple of years. But for me, it's been so eye-opening. And I think that as I bring my colleagues into, go to a hackathon and see how that works, it's very different from the way, governments tend to be, we don't tend to leave our buildings or our floors. We tend to be a little insular in terms of who we talk to and work with, and I think it's a completely different approach. So yeah, I think. All right.
Thanks for coming, guys.
Thank you.